what is everyone writing on their postcards now for off-market acquisition wholesale training? They all write the same thing. We'll buy your house for cash. Great. 98% of house sellers don't care about cash. That's why creative finance is so important right now.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Brian Driscoll. I'm here with Jonathan Greene. What's going on, Jonathan?
Brian, how are you? Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So everyone, Jonathan's been in the investing game or got introduced to it since he was like 4 years old, right? So, Jonathan, give me a little background. Give everyone a little background on like how you got into it, what you do, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Love the name of the show too, because I do eat, sleep, and invest. It's all investing all the time. I grew up with a dad who was an attorney, as I used to be an attorney as well. But my dad focused all of his time just looking at real estate. So as a kid, I was just going into foreclosures. We were buying properties. I was learning how to landlord from literally 8, 10 years old on. He used to bring me to all the properties that we owned, introduced me to the people who lived there. And these were commercial, single families, any type of property out there. And then as I grew up going through my businesses, I was always involved in real estate because I had real estate that I owned as a child and I was always playing with the properties. So after 18, I started to invest on my own, and that's mushroomed into now, which is basically 30 years as an adult of just investing, flipping houses, doing single family rentals, playing around with commercial. And then now I have a podcast like you on investing, which is why I love to be on other investing podcasts as well.
Yeah, cool. And you know what? That brings up something interesting too. So I know back in the day when I was growing up, right? I remember being in my dad's car. We might have been going to church or something. And he was listening to it was either Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins, right? And the reason I bring that up is because the same thing, like your dad introduced you to real estate at a really young age. Other people with kids, like, what do you think about introducing them? Like, just taking them along with you? What do you think how did that affect you?
Dramatically. But I think we have to look at it from a child's point of view also, because before 18, I thought everything my dad said was, BS. Like, oh, why is he all these lectures in the car? But then something clicks at some point where you're like, well, I mean, this guy's pretty smart. And I knew he was smart. And I started to, even as a young kid before I was 18, I started to enjoy the things that we did, and we were spending a lot of time together. So I'm a big advocate. Like my kids are 22 and 20 now, but I've been telling them steadily about real estate their whole lives. We've moved, we flip houses that we've lived in, but I never force it on them until they're ready. I think my son, who's older, is definitely getting more ready on the investing side. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, I grew up in a time where most people just assume, you're going to get a 9-to-5 job and you're going to work and then you're going to save. But my dad was a different type of person, and my mom, they were both non-disciplinarians. I never had rules. So I was like a little bit more available to open thinking. And my dad was someone who allowed me to do stuff with money at a very young age to see what happens. So I was earning money in stocks at, 15 years old because he allowed me the opportunity to do it. So I'm a big advocate for letting children see how it works and training them, whether they're listening or not. They'll get it later.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because I think they hear this stuff and it just doesn't click. And then sometime it's going to click. But also, like what you said too, don't force it. Like, yeah. If they got a personality like me, like you try forcing me to something, my heels go in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I was the same, but my dad was he was very calm. So he would just continue with the lecture even when I was looking out the window. I was listening. I knew he was smart, and it's interesting, the older that you get, the more you realize you've basically doing the things that your parents did. And I'm hoping that I'm advancing, his legacy that he left me.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, by the way, too.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
So now you said your dad was an attorney. Now you were an attorney also?
Yeah, I was to almost 10 years. Yeah, practicing.
What kind of, which side, like business or?
No, I was a prosecutor for 7 years. I did 250 jury trials, 2 verdicts. So I was actually a trial attorney. And then I had about 2.5 years as a criminal defense attorney, all in the state of Florida. And then my dad had passed away. And when my dad passed away, he was very loved that I was an attorney. He loved watching me in trial because he wasn't a trial attorney. And after he passed away, I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I've done this enough. I had little kids and I was dealing with the criminal justice system all day. It just wasn't for me anymore. And that started what turned into a longer position. I was always doing real estate. I spent 6 years in the art world in between, but a lot of the art world was also, I was doing real estate at the same time. So That was kind of the release function to get out of law, and then in an odd circumference, start practicing what my dad had always done as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's what I was curious on. Like, how'd you get from legal into real estate? Because they're totally different fields.
The thing that my dad taught me is that real estate's always something that you're doing. Like I was doing it my whole life. I was buying houses and figuring out before I thought I was an investor. I just thought that's what you do with your free time. And I always liked houses. I think it was because I had been in so many. I knew what they looked like, felt like. I knew that you could do value add, because my dad was a house flipper. So it was like, these things all were playing there. And I did have the regular job. But then when I left the regular job, I started then creating my own businesses. And that's what's led me to these, which are my own on-market real estate team, my off-market acquisition company, and then figuring out how to do it all kind of as a cohesive thing, which isn't always that easy.
Right. So what does your business look like now? Because I know you do flipping, rentals, like elaborate on that, like what you're doing.
It's the lightest that it's ever been now on purpose. So, pandemic pushed prices up so high and we had a lot of old properties and we sold them all. Timing was right to cash out on them, take the cap gains and not do 1031s because we didn't want to buy in high into a high market. So basically, for the last couple of years, I've just been lightly flipping, which really I think I did only one last year. The year before I did maybe 2 or 3. I've never been a high volume flipper, but I do well on my flips. I'm doing flips that I can make about 200 on instead of like the lower numbers because it's just a lot of work for me. So yeah, now in the hold space, we're really just waiting to see what I want to deploy money into. With high rates, I have cash that's waiting. So I'm looking more into syndications and other opportunities that I want to do. But this has been a great time the last 2 to 3 years of figuring out how I want to invest, and that includes my time, not just my money, because they go together. And now, it's all going to kind of figure itself out as I look at all the different asset classes and train myself as to what, works best.
What do you think's coming?
Not much soon. I don't think from everything that I research, and I do a lot, the one thing I know is I can't predict any of it. So generally, I don't watch the news. I don't watch the real estate news at all. I don't watch anything. To me, real estate's completely local. So if I watch the news and it says, it's going to be terrible and my market's good, I'm going to convince myself out of my own market. So I don't think rates are going down anytime soon, on the traditional thing. So that means that hard money's higher for investors, and there's going to be a lot of issues there. This is a great time for seller finance and creative finance. I think if you're an investor right now, you need to be looking at, subject to creative finance of any kind, seller finance, especially on commercial, because commercial's where there's going to be a lot of opportunities. If rates come down, prices go up. So as an investor, I'm always investing. I'm just actually not deploying right now because the deals aren't good enough for me. I don't see something that's going to make the money that I want, so it doesn't make sense to me. But when it comes along, I will be ready.
I'm there with you. I don't even think I might have bought one property this year. Same thing. It's like,
yeah,
I'm just waiting,
Yeah. But I think, the thing is, like, social media is crazy now. It looks like everybody's buying 80 properties, and maybe there are people out there who are buying 80. Those deals aren't that good. So if you know someone who bought 50 properties, like, they're buying high, they're probably still going to do well because they have a funnel. They know what they're doing. But like, I'm a very patient person. I learned that as well, from my dad. And I don't have the lure to count how many doors I have. I have no idea. Never counted before. It's been a lot more than it is now. But either way doesn't change how much I know or that I'll be ready. But I watch the market, just not the national market. If I want to invest in out of state, which I've done many times, and I was involved in, short-term rentals before, Airbnb existed. It's just about figuring out what assets can create multiple opportunities for you. And I just haven't seen the good enough deals to make me want to take my money out and spend it on something.
I'm with you. Yeah, I always figure like when the deals are slim, see, I'm a buy and hold investor. So I know guys wholesaling and stuff, they're going to continue, but I'm just looking for buy and hold in a small area.
Yeah.
And I figure when the deals are slim, just hold the cash because when that deal pops up, you have to be liquid to be able to buy it too. You don't want to be spread thin.
I've made that mistake before, though. I've either locked stuff up in funds or bonds when I was younger, and then like a screamer deal comes across, and you're like, oh, now I got to figure out how to get the money. I know I don't have to figure out where to get the money. And I know that by having a lot of cash now, I can use that to deploy in a lot of different ways. And I can use it as leverage. I can lend it if I want to lend it. So to me, like, we were talking about this just before, having an investing podcast, you get to talk to people. And every time you get off, you're like, oh my God, now I have more ideas. So for a year and a half, I've been doing that too. And I'm really trying to formulate like what my new idea is that's not, colored by how I grew up or held by properties that we've owned. We still have a couple holdover properties, but I was always a single family investor. I like single family houses. I like flipping. I just can't be the point person on the flip because it drives me crazy.
I'm with you. 100% there. Speaking of the podcast, what's your podcast name if people want to check it out?
Yeah, it's Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. We've been going about a year and a half. We publish twice a week. And, similar to you, it's like, hey, talking to investors, finding out what they do is a great way to just get information out there. Podcasts, like, they're so cool. And I listen to a lot of non-investing podcasts as well. But I love that people can intake information while they're going to the gym, driving in a car, taking a walk, and they're still getting stuff that they can use later. Just like, I said, when I grew up with my dad, he talked a lot, but it all crystallized for me at a moment. And I feel that's the way with podcasts. Like, you can be a new investor, listen to an apartment syndication podcast. It doesn't really make sense for you in the beginning. But like in a year after you've done your due diligence and you've done a couple of deals, you're like, oh, wait, I remember that podcast. Now I can go back, listen to it, and then listen to more as well.
Yeah, just like connecting the dots. You get the dots and then you connect them all at some point in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how it is. The more, education that you put in there, the more people you talk to who are also investors, the more you're going to learn and then apply when the time's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what's the number one mistake you think you made that other people might be able to learn from?
Well, I know the biggest mistake that I've made money-wise was, so after the, crisis in 2008, I had very few losses in my career, and I had 2 single families in Florida, and I was moving to New York. So I lost a decent amount of money on those, but that wasn't the mistake. That just happens as being an investor in market cycles. What I did after 2008 is I got scared, and I took all my money and I just held it in the bank in cash, earning very, very tiny returns because I was in just a panic mode that like the world's going haywire, banks are going to fail. Like, how did this happen? And I grew up as a cash investor, and I had just kind of started getting mortgages after a divorce, and I just panicked. And I literally let the money sit there for like 6, 7, 8 years. And if I had activated and started buying more at that time, instead of being panicked as like a young father trying to hold this nest egg, I would have made a lot more money for my kids at that time. I've rectified that now, but I just know like getting panicked is usually because you're not confident in understanding the market. And I was just kind of hiding from the market then because it seemed like things were bad and I wasn't investigating as an investor like I should have been.
Yeah, and you know what? It's hard to invest when stuff's scary.
Yeah.
Like, even when a pandemic happened, it's like, crap. And the people that invested right then made a ton of money.
Exactly.
It's like the world's ending. I remember 2000. I remember exactly where I was when they announced like everything's going down. Like, that was a big deal.
Yeah, but remember, like at the beginning of 2020, if you just take your general single-family home buyer, not an investor, just your regular single-family home buyer, everyone was like, oh, prices are jettisoning, they're so high. There's all these pandemic buyers. All of those early pandemic buyers are all up like 25% minimum in my area. So it's like people were like, telling them, oh, you're buying in way too high. No, not in my area. They're still making money. So that's why I know that was my worst move, because I wasn't acting like an investor. I wasn't even studying the market. I was just being scared. And part of it was being a new father and having, going through a divorce and just trying to figure out, like, I don't want to lose all my stuff. But I should have known that my dad taught me better than that. And then I kind of just like woke up one day many years later and was like, okay, I got to get back to it. And then I slowly started it. But I never wanted to be like a high volume investor, because that's just high volume annoyance for me. But I do think now moving forward, I've kind of made more plans as to what I'm going to do. And like you said, and we said before, I'm ready to deploy. So when the deals start coming again, or I find a different market that I really love or a new asset class, I'll be ready.
So looking back at 2008, what would you have done different? Would you like kept a reserve and then invested some, or like what would you have done differently, you think?
Yeah, I would have started buying right away. I mean, to me now, like when I see a downturn, I'm holding for the deals to get better now. And at the time, I think I just lost my investor mindset, and I think it was a lot of things. My dad had passed away not that far before that. My kids were little. I was going through a divorce, and you're just like trying to keep your like life on track. And I was running my own business, which at the time were multiple art galleries, and that wasn't making money. So it's like, well, what am I doing to keep this safe? And I just kind of grinded my way through. But I lost my investor mindset. When you think of the name of your podcast, Eat, Sleep, Invest, it's like you have to have that mindset all the time. It doesn't mean you always have to activate, but I kind of lost my like bravado to be an investor during that time. And, fortunate enough, it wasn't because I had major losses. I did have two, losses on houses, but I lived in Florida. Like that's, hello, 2008 wasn't friendly to Florida. So, I get what I got, but I think that, now I am focused on always keeping my investor hat on and just never taking it off.
Yeah, I agree. One way I was able to do that, because I've been scared before too. It's like just have a 12-month reserve. So that, because I can think differently. If I have enough to pay my bills for 12 months, I don't have to panic. So I got 12 months and I can think differently versus like, oh crap. Like,
yeah. I mean, I just never wanted to be in a position where I couldn't figure it out. So that's why this stuff stayed in the bank. For that reason, I was like, well, I can just look at it and it's all sitting there and it looks good. But now I want to, make more, for my kids.
Yeah. And those are the things that make you successful in the future, because you get punched in the face a little bit and it's like, okay, I see that. Let's pivot,
Yeah. But I never wanted to be someone who got caught up or too over leveraged or just got caught, because I knew a lot of people in 2008 who just really, went bottoms up on the bankrupt because they were really highly leveraged. And my dad taught me to be like low leverage, but then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was like, oh, okay, there's good leverage and there's bad leverage. Like I don't have to follow Dave Ramsey philosophy like I did when I was younger. So I started to incorporate, and now I think I've turned everything that I read, everything that I learn on podcasts, into my own philosophy, which again is ever evolving, as we go into markets like this and things are, crazy or harder to buy, to me, that's why I practice this mindset investing, to make sure that like I'm good. And, the investors that I'm talking to, I'm just trying to say like, you don't have to buy right now. You can, but I think the funniest thing that people are saying now is, oh, there's no inventory. There's no inventory. There's just no inventory on the market. There's inventory everywhere. I live in New Jersey. It's the densest state in America. Like there's literally houses everywhere. There's inventory. If you're an investor and you're an off-market acquisition specialist, you figure out how to get it when the time's right. But it's out there. It's just not on the MLS. Okay. Figure out how to get it.
That's so true. Okay. So talk about mindset here a little bit, because that's big. You're right. There's houses everywhere. The inventory is everywhere. You're right. It's just not listed with an agent.
Just the separation of that principle. If you're always thinking there's no inventory, then you're going to panic and pay more. There's a bunch of desperate investors, desperate buyers over the last 2 years who bought in high. Like we said, some of them did well because they bought in the beginning. But like, if you're buying in now, could you still do well? Yeah, you still can, but you have to understand your own local market dynamics. So for me, I'm always trying to reframe it and make sure that people are like relaxed and confident. Something that everyone talks about in terms of mindset is new investors all over everywhere always say, oh, I'm stuck in analysis paralysis. No one's really stuck in analysis paralysis. They just haven't gained the confidence that they need to feel comfortable enough to invest. And it's because they're doing the wrong things. I mean, I know that you know this, but how many investors are out there saying like, oh, I've looked at 20 properties this week, but none of them pencil. And I said, well, how many did you see in person? And they're like, well, I didn't see any in person. I'm just doing calculations online. I said, how are you going to learn anything like that? You want to be an investor. You never even looked at a house in real life, and you're looking in Topeka, Kansas at houses online that don't have pictures of the basement. Like, how are you going to know anything? And that's where the mindset shift is. Like, if you want to buy and invest in houses, like you better get comfortable with houses. You better know what they smell like, feel like at 100,000 in your area, 200,000, 400,000. Because if you go to the two towns over, that same price is different. So you can't understand national markets and real estate by saying like, hey, 300,000 equals this, or repair costs equal this, because repair costs in Anchorage, Alaska are not the same as they are, in Mendham, New Jersey, where I am.
Yeah, and you're right too. Even like with some of the newer investors just trying to pencil them out, you have to get into the house. it's not the house half the time, it's the owner. Like it's the motivation. Like you need to get in front of
Exactly. That's exactly it right there. What is everyone writing on their postcards now for off-market acquisition wholesale training? They all write the same thing. We'll buy your house for cash. Great. 98% of house sellers don't care about cash. That's why creative finance is so important right now. You can pay them their price if you're using something like creative finance, but they're way high on everything else. So if you want to change the mindset of how you do it, like you said, people are saying like, hey, none of these deals pencil. Come on, spreadsheets are simple. You can make a deal pencil. All you have to do is adjust one number. So it's almost too easy to make a deal work. You have to look outside that. And so part of what I, focus on is what I call asset hunting. That exists outside spreadsheets, but it incorporates what we're saying. Like, go look at houses. You'll understand what an asset is when you go and see it. First of all, you can know, how are you buying stuff without knowing what's in the basement? That's insane to me. I mean, of course, if you have boots on the ground and you're out of state, you're going to send somebody in. They're going to take all the pics of the basement. But a lot of new investors are just looking at a slew of pictures that don't incorporate anything structural. How are you going to know what's wrong with the house? You're going to find out, but you're going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah, especially, do you guys have block foundations in Jersey? Like basement?
Yeah.
Do they push in? Like you'll see the horizontal cracks or like the step cracks?
Yes, many. And there's a lot of deals failing right now on market and off market now because there was a time where sellers were in control of everything and sellers were asking for all of these crazy things, taking everything as is. And now buyers are like, yeah, you know what? Those cracks in the foundation aren't okay with me. Like, we're going to get a structural engineer out. They're going to do it. And hey, after the structural engineer sends the report, you're on notice that you have these problems. So you're going to have to disclose them. So I think buyers are getting a little bit more savvy in terms of what they're going to do. Investing sounds good, and real estate's a great asset because it's tangible, but it's tangible for a reason. If it's tangible and you can touch it, then you need to go touch it. You can't just begin as an investor and not look at real estate because eventually it's all going to blow up in your face if you don't understand houses or real estate or properties or land value or what's happening with neighborhoods. If you're not looking at migration trends, you're going to say like, look, you're in Pittsburgh. Take Philadelphia, for example. Philadelphia, you could buy a house on one block and you could go around the corner, literally 7 houses away, and it could be worth $50,000 less just because that's how quick those neighborhoods break in Philly. And that's what you need to know. And that's why real estate is local and not national. So for everybody who spends time, wringing their hands over the national news, it doesn't make any difference. That stuff doesn't even apply to you. It's just general rhetoric that's going to keep you out of the market. Go to a local meetup, meet local real estate investors. I guarantee you'll find a bunch of people who aren't on social media who are crushing deals left and right.
Yep, I'm with you too, especially with the media too. The media has an objective. So it depends what channel you're listening to, depends on what you're going to hear. It's like, turn that crap off. The local guys, you're right, at the RIAs, things like that, those are the real people there that you're going to make connections with, work some deals, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's shiny out there. There's a lot of things on social media that look good for investors. There's a lot of, quasi-investors who are making a lot of content. Some know what they're doing, some don't. But if you read The Millionaire Next Door, that'll tell you all you need to know. Most of the people who you don't know are investing in real estate. Everyone who's doing it now on social media is late to the party. My dad wasn't around on social media, posting about all of his properties and picking up checks at landlord. He was just doing the work, going to foreclosures, digging in dumps. I mean, that's how you get to know about real estate. You walk dumps, you understand where the costs are, and you use that as leverage to get a better deal.
Yeah, and you're right. Looking at everyone in social media, too, everyone makes real estate look sexy.
Right.
It's not real sexy. It's going into houses that are hoarder houses and talking with people with real problems and then trying to figure out a solution to help them.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, though. Real estate is a person-to-person business. This is a business of relationships. You're not going to make great deals if you're not good at relationships. You're going to try to be a property bully, which is what, original wholesaling was trained at. There's a lot of good wholesalers now, but original wholesaling was just trained at pushing quick cash deals. Nobody cares about that. If you don't know where the seller's going, how are you supposed to buy their house? They don't know where they're going. What are you going to do? Buy their house and just push them out on the street? They're not selling it to you until they know where they're going. So you become that part of that relationship, and the best deals that every investor who's ever existed of any long term will always tell you the same thing. All the best deals came from just relationships. You can make funnels, you can send postcards. It's who you're getting those to and then who you can ask. If you send postcards wildly and don't research like Bob Smith, you don't know that Bob Smith owns 14 other properties in the area, and then you're going to make that call and not know that. That's just a big waste of money right there.
I'm with you. Hey, we're almost out of time here. Is there anything else we wanted to make sure we covered?
No, I think like my best advice now, like this is obviously like it's a market cycle where people are a little bit panic ridden. This is the best time to listen to podcasts, get the education, read books, and go to meetups. I can't stress enough that meetups are really the most important part, especially for new investors. There's one thing that about investors, they love to talk about themselves. So if you're going to meetups, you're going to get more information than you've ever have. Just try to skip the ones with all the hard money lenders and just get there with other real estate investors. And you'll find the millionaires next door. They'll teach you everything that you need to know. And then you take that with podcasts, with sites like Bigger Pockets, and you use that as leverage. But relationships between investors is where you're going to learn everything.
100%. I 100% agree there. Hey, John, what's your top book you'd recommend to somebody?
Woo. So let's see. For getting your stuff together, it's always The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. That's one of my favorite books. Like if it's like Atomic Habits by James Clear, a great book. They're a very similar thing. On the investing side, I've been reading The Hands-Off Investor by Brian Burke, and that's like on vetting syndications and figuring out how to do it. So if you're like interested in being more passive, that book is really the way to get into it. I read hundreds of books, so there's a lot of them, but those two are the ones like right off the top of my head that say like, you should read that.
Awesome. Those are good. Yeah. Hey, what's the best way for people to reach out?
Probably on social, on Instagram. I'm at Trust Greene, and Greene has an E at the end. And you can really usually find me on Instagram. I do respond to my DMs. That's actually me in there. I just don't respond to spam, or I copy it and then I put it in my stories because I really don't like spam. Yeah, my website is also trustgreen.com, and that's where you'll find the podcast then and the art of real estate investing.
Well, good stuff. Thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it. I'm going to just go eat, sleep, and invest the rest of my life now.
I like it. Hey, everyone, thanks for listening. Get out there, crush it, close some deals. We'll see you guys next time.